The three kind of main areas that I talked about in my article were really around new business models and distribution, and trying to solve some of the distribution for authors, because right now it's very much in the hands of publishers and fairly limited when it comes to consumer publishing, and the opportunities are fairly limited for authors. So I think everyone thinks that they've got a book in them, but honestly, try and get it published. It's the hardest thing in the world. The second key solution I can really see being helpful, blockchain can be really helpful with, is IP management, asset management, especially around global asset management, where the asset is, or the IP is particularly valuable and sits in many people's hands, and also has the inherent super problem of piracy, which blockchain really, really can help with because of the integrity of the blockchain. And then third, sales production and collaboration processes, which is something that Phil touched on. In terms of kind of rights management, just to talk a little bit more in depth about how blockchain can help solve the solution. A lot of the solutions are not in publishing currently, but in a fairly parallel industry, you can see some brilliant solutions if anybody wants to Google around the music industry. If you have a look at Mycelium, which is a solution that Imogen Heap has created, the creative passport for artists to be able to track the usage of their IP. It's a really interesting movement there. And I think that's something that can be very easily translated into our industry. And at the moment, if you think about what the problem really is for IP management, if I can just, is it okay, Byron, if I just dive in a bit on that? Is that right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
If you look at something really valuable, like let's say Star Wars, the rights will be residing with film people, game people, merchandisers, Lego. It could be any number of very valuable assets globally. And each of those parties will own some level of rights, but there'll be no interaction as to where the beginning and end of those rights are, because every license will have a term, every license will have a really detailed remit. But all the licensing for those different parts will sit in siloed places. But everybody else will need to know what everyone else's rights are to make sure they don't infringe them. And that in itself just doesn't work. So there's a load of real conflict that happens there. And then you get piracy as well, because of course the IP is valuable. And that for the industry means that everyone spends a huge amount of money on lawyers. Nobody has any visibility. And the rights owner themselves is probably a creative person who needs to have control over their rights and really needs people to act in a way with lots of integrity. And that in itself just doesn't work when you think about the way that we handle rights. And blockchain could be a brilliant solution for that. In the same way that Mycelium does for Creative Passport, anybody who creates something should be able to track it and have some visibility over it. I think the only limiting issue with that is that, of course, then there's money involved, and that's something that nobody ever wants to talk about. They want to talk about what rights they own, but they don't want to talk about how much money they make. So there has to be a way to split two of those things.